So
than a lot of people.
times were certainly different when Heroes first came out. I mean, I guess you had TiVo, but you didn't have much internet streaming.
Yes,
People had to
yes,
wait for the episodes to come out.
yes.
And you've been an innovator of formats. How
Yeah.
do you see your job as a screenwriter today in capturing an audience with an ever more shorter and fragmented
Right.
attention span?
Well, maybe it'll be interesting for me to go back and sort of unpack a little bit about where this journey, because it's an interesting part of the conversation as to so Heroes was a very it was very innovative at the time of in how it approached the online audience. At the time, the ratings for television were starting to really go down for all of television, and it was this whole migration of people, suddenly social media had popped up, YouTube and then gaming, and there were just all sorts of competition for people's eyeballs at the time. And so the ratings for nightly television was starting to drop. So when Heroes got picked up to series at NBC, I think there were 6 people in what they called the .com division of the NBC at the time. And that's when we got picked up. And when we went on the air 4 months later and started airing, there were 67 people. So they hired 60 people over this 3 or 4 month period. And the mandate that this .com division of the network had was get out there and figure out where the audience is and how to get them back to watching television. It was really a simple mandate. They knew they were out there. And so that sort of desperate energy from the network at the time, it was really kind of desperate. That energy met with a show, Heroes, that had kind of a lot of possibilities of how to reach that audience, because of the genre stuff and because of the fan base kind of quality, because of the Comic-Con audience that we were going to try and reach, right? So we launched at Comic-Con before any television shows really launched at Comic-Con. We developed this whole, one of my, producers of the show and creators of the show with me was this guy, Jeff Loeb, who is a big comic book guy, big giant comic book guy. And he really understood that audience. And so we designed a whole launch at Comic-Con that from that launch, which was a month before the show aired for the first time, from that launch, we had this massive, like a viral campaign that grew out of it, because there was this hunger for having something on the air that that these fans could relate to. And so we ended up with this, like I said, with this mandate from the network to figure this thing out. We ostensibly had sort of a blank check to figure this idea out, and we had about 50 people working on the content that was designated for the online content. And out of the, yes, out of like the 300 people that work on a television show, we have 50 of them were dedicated to just the online stuff. And we did all kinds of experimental stuff because nobody, as I say, there was no such thing as a bad idea, because nobody knew what a bad idea was. So we could try all kinds of stuff. And so we did, web series and mockumentaries and mashups and mobile games and, just all this ancillary content where the audience could find elements of the show. And because the show had a deep kind of mythology and a deep canon to the show, and way too much story to tell anyway every week. It was a serialized show, and it had a lot of story, a lot of characters. And so we started to approach this online thing as a kind of 360 universe that we could tell story in different areas. So on our online comic books, we would have one storyline. And so if a character on the show walked out of a room and you didn't see him again, you could follow that story on this comic book that would pop up the next day online, and you could see what happened when that character walked out of the room. And so it was trying to extend the story across all of these platforms and to sort of think of it as this three-dimensional universe that you could live in. And so the audience just loved finding all this stuff, all these kind of like threads and Easter eggs and discoveries. And then the holy grail of that was when something that would generate, something that was generated online in an online comic or in a webisode or even some mobile content or something like that, when that would migrate back to the show. And so for the average audience, it would make sense on the show that character was there. But for the online audience who knew all about that character, it was really satisfying because they were like, oh my God, I love that character. I know everything about him. I know what. And there was so it was trying to generate a lot of insider knowledge, because the truth is the social currency of fandom a lot of times is your knowledge, the depth of your knowledge about the thing that the show or the story world that you love. The depth of your knowledge is really your social currency, right? If you give a real fan a chance to find one more thing than the guy next to him, that's a big deal. And so we allowed for this interconnected world where people could find out a lot of stuff.